Hey y'all, today we have a cool first time guest on today, Jeanna Kelley from Falconholic and SB Nation. Jeanna, tell people a little bit about yourself.
Like you said, my name's Jeanna Kelley. I've been covering the Falcons for about 12 years at the Falcoholic, and I've spent time as a national news desk writer for SB Nation covering the NFL. And now I help run all of our NFL team sites. We have a team site for every team. I know that you've probably got a lot of Eagles listeners,
Yes.
so definitely check out Bleeding Green Nation. It is the best community for Eagles fans on the internet.
It is. It really is. So 14 years. So you came in right right after Michael Vick was gone, and then you got to watch the rebuild, and then to the Super Bowl against the Patriots. That's the time frame that you've been there.
Yeah, I actually started covering the team in 2010. So I actually wasn't an NFL fan when I moved to Georgia from Ohio. Ohio is all about Ohio State football, and so that was my first love. When I moved to Georgia, I really missed kind of the culture of Ohio State football and being surrounded with that, and so that was kind of why I was introduced to the Falcons. And Michael Vick made me fall in love with the game and the team. He was just such an electric player and so much fun to watch. So been here ever since, through all the ups and many, many downs.
Yes, I put out at watching Josh Allen now. He's I feel like he's like the next iteration. Of course, Lamar Jackson is more of a carbon copy, so to speak, of a Michael Vick. But I think Josh Allen's kind of like an evolution of like taking what Vick did to the next level. So they had that commercial with the Michael Vick experience. So I put up we need a Josh Allen experience video game roller coaster.
Yes.
So breaking news on the NFL front, Christian McCaffrey traded to the 49ers, which is I think for me as an Eagles fan, something that I would worry about in terms of, because Kyle Shanahan, in my opinion, is such a offensive genius and has been able to work with, I think, lesser than players. And I think that's not much of a hot take, less talented players than Christian McCaffrey. I mean, what are your initial thoughts on that move?
So, I mean, my, knee-jerk reaction was, first of all, could you do this at a time that's not after my bedtime? But that's neither here nor there. I think that it really kind of screams that the 49ers are they're looking at this as a Super Bowl or bust year. That's the only reason that I think that you make that kind of a blockbuster trade. Obviously, I think it fills a need. I agree that Kyle Shanahan is an offensive genius. I loved covering him when he was in Atlanta. But always with McCaffrey, the biggest concern is going to be, can he stay healthy? And over the past few years, that's been a real challenge for him. So I think that really the impact of this trade it's going to hinge on his health entirely.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the coach will definitely, that Shanahan will definitely factor that into how heavily they use him. Do you think that he would be able to clear the physicals and all that to play this Sunday for them?
I think that that's a pretty quick turnaround. I would be a little bit surprised, especially because so much of Shanahan's offensive scheme relies on blocking from pretty much every position on offense at different times. And so it's a little bit of a lift to learn it. I think back to, Matt Ryan and Devontae Freeman's first season in that Shanahan offense, and the learning curve for those guys was pretty steep. So I think that could keep him off the field this Sunday. I could be wrong, but I would say that if he does play, I wouldn't set my expectations terribly high for him this week, just because I know the complexity of that scheme, and I know that there's going to be a learning curve.
Absolutely. I agree with you there. I think if you've got him starting in fantasy, you're kind of you have your fingers crossed, because it could be that he only has, maybe 3 points. If he does play at all, to your point, he might only have like 3 or 4 points because he might not get so many snaps and the opportunity.
Exactly. But once he gets up to speed in that offense, I mean, he is just such a dynamic player. He's so effective as a receiver out of the backfield. Obviously, a very effective running back, too. So I'm excited to see what he can do in Kyle Shanahan's scheme. But yeah, my expectations are pretty tempered for this week.
For week one with the 49ers. Do you think that they're making a good bet that it is a good year for them to try to win the Super Bowl?
I mean, it's been already such a wild year for the 49ers. You know, obviously they were hoping on Trey Lance being the starter, and with that injury, they're back with Garoppolo, and we had all that drama in the offseason. Like, were they even going to keep him on the roster? It's going to be really interesting, but they are packed with talent. When that defense is fully healthy, they're formidable. I can't believe that we're talking about a team that the Falcons actually beat last weekend, because I did not see that coming. But yeah, I mean, I think that especially with the addition of McCaffrey, if he's able to get healthy and get up to speed, it's going to be a really big boost to that offense. And when the defense is fully healthy, they're scary. And so I think that in a really weird year for the NFC, I do think it's possible.
Well, so you brought up the Falcons. I mean, they beat them pretty handily too, 28-14.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that that formula could have them looking at a wild card opportunity this year, the Falcons?
I do. And I mean, frankly, I think it's a possibility at this point that they win the NFC South. I mean, they're tied 3-3, obviously not like the most impressive records, but it is at the top of
It's
the
0-0.
It is basically. And, every team in the NFC South has major issues, including the Falcons. Looking at the Panthers, they are just a complete tire fire
Yes.
at the moment. Baker's hurt, and I think that they're going to be relying on Sam Darnold. And I mean, it's just. Whew, I'm relieved that I moved to Georgia instead of Carolina, because I might have ended up having to suffer through the season with the Panthers. And then the Buccaneers, like I don't feel like they really have an identity. I really don't feel like they have a strong identity on either side of the ball. I think that the transition away from Arians as the head coach has been, maybe a bigger disruption than anticipated. So, and then obviously there's always like off-field drama with Tom Brady, and who knows. So
Yes.
they have their own issues. And then the Saints, my goodness, we saw what they did last night. Now, as someone that the New Orleans Saints have identified as a top 3 Saints hater on Twitter, something I'm very proud of.
That's great.
I was delighted to see that. But yeah, I don't even know what to say about the Saints. Like, I think they just have a lot of issues.
So you think that not only could they really have a chance to win, so just to make sure I'm
Mm-hmm.
conveying what you said correctly, you not only do they have a chance to win a wild card berth, but they could outright win this division.
They could. The Falcons' schedule coming up looks pretty favorable.
Okay.
And so I think that that's a big help. I also think it's still slightly hilarious to me that Marcus Mariota won the NFC Offensive Player of the Week award last year with fewer than 200 passing yards. But I mean, he's not a guy that you want throwing the ball, 60 times a game or whatever. And he is able to make and extend plays with his legs. And as long as they can keep the ground game consistent, I think that they can continue to score enough points to, sneak by the upcoming opponents.
Will we get a chance to see Ritter at some point, or as long as Mariota's keeping them at water, above water, no Ritter?
It's so funny because we do this thing at SB Nation. It's a survey weekly. SB Nation Reacts that we poll each fan base. And last week's question for Falcons fans was, when do you think Ritter should take over as the starter? Because Mariota had been bad. I mean, he had looked bad. And of course, then he comes out and he wins NFC Offensive Player of the Week. So that kind of throws all of that out the window. But I do think at some point we'll see Ritter. I think that the coaching staff does want to evaluate and should be evaluating, could he be the franchise quarterback of the future? And I don't think that you get an accurate understanding of that from watching him play, run the scout team, or from watching him play in the preseason. So will the Falcons ever run up a big enough lead on an opponent where they're like,
No,
okay, we can put in the backups? I highly, highly doubt it.
no.
Will the Falcons ever get down far enough in a game that they're like, okay, send in the backups? I think that that's the more likely opportunity for us to actually get a look at Ritter in live game action.
Yeah, because I mean, we're more than a third through the season, so at a certain point, you would want to give him some extended game action, because you do have to
Mm-hmm.
go, and it seems like they'll probably be in the middle of the pack when we pick in the first round next year, and that's prime picking up a quarterback
Mm-hmm.
territory. So you don't want to have to jump the gun if you have the guy, and you don't know if you have the guy until he plays.
And the Falcons have really struggled, I think, during the Thomas Dimitroff years and the way that he managed the cap. The Falcons have been pretty strapped for cash. And so it
Yes.
makes it really hard to have adequate depth at all of the positions where they need it. So the team is going to go into this off season with a ton of needs still to fill. Sorry, I'm still on my first cup of coffee today. But so, if you don't have to spend that first round pick on a quarterback, I mean, that creates an opportunity to really round out some of the depth elsewhere on the roster. And I think that that's a really important thing for the Falcons to focus on this offseason.
So in the NFC East, if any of so there you got the Eagles, you got the Cowboys, and you got the
Mhm.
Giants. I don't think anybody's thinking the Commanders would make a wild card run, but I mean, right
Not
now,
even Commanders fans.
no, nobody, nobody who's sober at this beautiful time of day who really would even say that. But
Yeah.
do you think do you think that three will make the wild card or make the playoffs this year? Or do you think the Cowboys or Giants or the Eagles will fall off?
Again, like it's such a weird season in the NFC, which is why I have to say, yeah, I think it's possible.
Yeah,
I mean, really, they could snap up both of those spots. I think yeah, obviously tons of factors go into this. Players staying healthy is the big thing,
of course.
but
Yes.
the Cowboys have been able to kind of hang on even with Dak out, and I
Yep.
I think that he's back this week, so
I
that'll
believe
be
so.
interesting. I've loved what Dan Quinn has done with their defense. I think that they've really improved over the last couple of years, and that makes a big difference for them. But I think that the team that I have the hardest time believing in the NFC East is the Giants. I think that that's probably, maybe a little bit unfair. I'm looking at them over the past several years, and obviously with the new coaching staff, I think that they seem to, be showing some sincere improvement. But I don't know. I feel like the Giants and the Falcons have a lot of similarities as teams, so I'm always just waiting for a collapse with them. The
They're
Eagles
five
are
and
the team.
one.
Yeah, I know, which is crazy. The Eagles obviously are the team that I have the most confidence in out of that division. I don't see anybody overtaking them to win the division. I think that they are a surefire, playoff team, and I think that Super Bowl aspirations are not unreasonable from Eagles fans after what we've seen so far, just with Hurts development, and yeah, they're looking genuinely good.
I was talking with my buddy after he asked me to come and do his post game show. It's Philadelphia Sports Table. It's actually the longest running Philly sport. They were doing podcasts in 2012, 2013, which is I was like,
Ooh,
whoa, I didn't even know people were doing podcasts.
I don't even know if I knew that podcasts were a thing then.
No, I know that I didn't. And we were talking about on there how, he had us go through each position group and give them a grade for the game. And I think the highest grade I gave any unit was like an A minus, and they
Mhm.
still beat the Cowboys by 9 points. And I was like, wow. Afterwards, I was really thinking about that. Like the Eagles did not play their best game in any way against the Cowboys, and still 9 points against a division rival anytime is an impressive win.
It absolutely is. And I think that that's one of the things that stood out to me about the Eagles this year is that they've dealt with in-game adversity really well. And I think that that's why they've been able to do things like grind out that win against the Cowboys this week.
That the drive they had when after the Cowboys closed the gap from 10 to 20 to 17 to 20, and they come out 15 plays. I mean, hammering the ball, running the ball. That was like that. After that drive was the most confident I have actually been. I mean, there's no 17-0. I mean, there are a lot of silly people in Philadelphia talking about 17-0. No,
including Bleeding Green Nation. I saw it on the site today, and knowing Brandon Lee Gouton, it's tongue in cheek. But yeah, it is still. But I mean, hold on to that hope. It's still alive at this point.
I want to kind of like inoculate our fans or for that, because the people are going to build that up as if that would equal like a Super Bowl or something. So like they go 15-2. Oh, Jalen Hurts has disappointed the city. So no. The Bills are another team. How many wins? I didn't expect to ask you this, but since we're on the topic of teams with, I think, could be really high win totals, how many do you think that they end up getting out of 17 this year?
Oh gosh. I would say I'll be surprised if it's fewer than 13. They're a really good team. They're just a really, really good team. Very complete team, very well coached team. I think they were my early Super Bowl pick for the AFC. And I think, and Eagles Bills Super Bowl would be, I think, a really fun one.
That's what I've been thinking. Obviously, there's some hope in the Eagles one, but I thought that if the Eagles made the Super Bowl, it would be the Bills. It would be Eagles, and it would turn out if I think NFL fan nation wouldn't be disappointed, other than the fact that most people are Eagles fans or Bills fans.
True, that part's no fun, but only two teams make it every year, and I know as a Falcons fan, I'm very used to it not being my team.
Oh man, I have a lot of Falcons fan friends who. Yeah, I hope it for you. If the Eagles are going to have like a tank season or a bad season, and the one I kind of was hurting for you guys when you lost that one against Tom. I mean,
yeah, it was a heartbreak. I think that what helps is that we're also jaded at this point, and so like we never get excited until the clock hits 0, because we know disaster can strike at any moment.
Yeah. So with the Rams, they talk about, disappointing teams.
Mm-hmm.
Their point differential's -22 this year. But they're 3-3. They've got they're right around the pack. Do you think that do you think the Rams are going to return even to the playoffs? I don't think the Super Bowl. So I'm not even going to ask you that. No Super Bowl, period. But
and again, like, I know I sound like a broken record, but the NFC is just really weird this year. The Cardinals are not a very strong team. The Niners, oh gosh, the Seahawks are, well, I don't even think that they're part of the conversation here. No. So, I think the playoffs are possible. I think that the Niners have a better chance of winning the division, but going back. So yeah, it just depends on how all the wild card stuff shakes out. I think it's possible that they could get a wild card spot in this NFC this year. But yeah, they have looked like a totally different team.
First round exit if they do make it?
I think probably, yeah.
They're obviously trying to get Cam Akers out of there, apparently. Where do you think he ends up getting moved, if at all?
So there are a few options that I think would make sense. One of them is the Falcons. The Falcons have been able to kind of piecemeal together an effective running game with guys down the depth chart, with Cordero Patterson on IR. And I'm sure hoping that he's able to return, because first of all, he's just a fan favorite and a delightful person. It's been so much fun to watch. This resurgence career
has been amazing.
It's been so much fun to watch him at this point in his career, after all these years in the league, like really kind of find his niche and excel in that. But I do think that Akers, because he's actually a guy the Falcons could probably afford. That's a very short list, but I think that he could be a good fit there. The Colts are another one because their backfield's been banged up, and I think that that's honestly been part of Matt Ryan's struggles is they haven't really been able to run a balanced offense. I mean, I forget how many times he threw the ball on Sunday, but I think it was like over 50. It was absurd, and you can't.
No.
First of all, you're putting his life at risk. I mean, he's
Yes.
like 37, 38 years
Yes.
old. Those hit different the older that you get.
And he's never been mobile to be able to
No,
avoid.
that's why Dave Choate at the Falcoholic, like the biggest running bit while Matt was with the Falcons was anytime he would scramble, Matt or Dave would come up with like some way to describe it. That's like, a newborn deer on ice. It was that was one of the saddest things about the trade is that we knew that it was the end of those tweets. But yeah, so I think that the Colts would really make sense. The Seahawks, I think, could use him. I don't know. I mean, they're just not going to be a good team this year. So I don't know that they're going to be,
Buyers.
I don't think that they're going to be buyers. And then the other one is the Lions.
Okay.
The Lions are definitely an improved team, but because of injuries, I think that they could use a little bit of help in the backfield. And so those are really the four that I think would make sense. Obviously, my vote is the Falcons, but that's because I'm biased.
But so that tells me that you think that he's actually a good player in the Falcon. The Rams haven't gotten the most out of him.
I do think so, yeah. And I think that Arthur Smith's offensive philosophy is really interesting just because he's coached offensive lines. And, I just think that the way that he handles blocking creates more opportunities for running backs. And so I think that he's a more talented running back than the Falcons are working with right now. And so I think he could be a fit.
So it'd be more like a three-headed one. Cordero Patterson gets back. You'd have Algier. You'd have Akers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's pretty strong group. I mean, none of them like all pro guys, but all good.
I mean, honestly, it would be the strongest backfield that the Falcons have had since I would say Tevin Coleman and Devontae Freeman's best season together.
That was a ferocious backfield. So
it was
to that, yeah.
And I'm not saying that they would be as good, but like they were a really, really strong duo. And I think that kind of platoon situation could work out really well for the Falcons offense.
Especially because you want to limit the amount of times Marcus Mariota's throwing the ball.
Very much so. By any means necessary.
So if the Eagles are buyers, which they probably should be, where are some of the holes that you would figure that they should plug?
One thing that I'm a little bit concerned about with the Eagles is just injury in the defensive backfield. CJGJ, he's just such a phenomenal player. That was a phenomenal trade. Yes. I think that the Eagles really won that one hands down. But yeah, just like any injuries there, and I worry a little bit about the depth. So if there's, a defensive back that could be a good fit, I think that could be a possibility. Another guy, I really like low-key love this idea. It's not my idea. I read it somewhere, but Robert Quinn, because the Bears are bad. And he's an older guy. I think he's somebody who probably would like to go to a contender. He's a guy who could, he doesn't need to be an every down guy so that he can stay fresh and like help keep other players fresh. So those are really the two. Robert Quinn specifically, I love that idea for him and for the Eagles. But then also, I'd definitely be looking at defensive backs if I were the Eagles.
Yeah, and I held off until what I saw last Sunday night from number 42, Kayvon Wallace. I've tried to say he was coming along. I don't want him in the game at all. Like you said, if CJ Gardner-Johnson or Marcus Epps has to go out, I mean, he's always like in the wrong place, missing a tackle. It's rough.
Yeah. So I think that would be the most logical move and I do think that, shoring up their depth there just makes them even more of a contender.
Absolutely. So let's pick some week 7 games, which the Eagles will not be participating in because they're on their bye. The Atlanta, I almost said Hawks, Atlanta Falcons. They play the Bengals. They're 6.5-point underdogs in Cincinnati. What do you think of that?
I think that they will keep this one close, but I think that they lose. The one thing I'm a little bit, concerned about on the Bengals side of things is just Jamar Chase's hip. That could be something that slows him down a little bit, but he's still just such a dynamic player and so hard to cover. And then T. Higgins is apparently healthy and ready to play too. So the Falcons defense has been kind of up and down. We have definitely seen improvement from year to year. They're definitely better this year in the second year in Dean Pease scheme, but covering guys of that caliber, just I don't know. I don't feel great about it. So yeah, I'm picking the Bengals.
By
But
the 6.5 to cover.
oh gosh, to cover the Falcons have covered every single week this season, I think. I think that this is the week that they don't.
Okay. The Lions are 7-point underdogs in Dallas with Dak Prescott back. What do you think of that one?
I know that Dak is likely rushing back
Yes.
because there was this whole Jerry Jones manufactured
Yes.
quarterback controversy.
As always.
As always. I mean, nobody loves attention more than that man. And so I don't think Dak's going to be 100%. And the Lions are a really scrappy, really fun team. I think that the Lions could pull off a stunner here. I think that it would be a close game, but I think that I actually picked the Cowboys officially, but I'm going to go on record as saying I think that it would be great if the Lions could pull this off. And I think that with Dak's health status, I think that it is possible.
You kind of feel for Dan Campbell because he's coaching as hard as he's coaching his heart out.
He is.
They just don't have the horses at this point. They just don't yet.
They don't, and they've had a lot of injuries to key players, including captains. So people who have been like huge leaders in the locker room, and all of that stuff makes a really big difference. But I fell in love with the Lions during Hard Knocks, and so I'm always like kind of low key rooting for them now.
Yes. And they'll get Jamison Williams not this week, but in a couple weeks, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes. So that will be, I think, a big boost for them.
I had someone on a couple of weeks ago. They said that actually, when you look at the obviously looking at advanced stats, there'll be people who say that you shouldn't look at those, but you look at the advanced stats, and they said that basically Matt Stafford and Jared Goff are the same guy. At least this year, it looks like they're right.
Yeah, it does. And I don't know, Goff, I was real iffy on him being picked as high as he was when he was drafted. And I just didn't feel like I felt like he was going to have a pretty big learning curve coming into the NFL. Every rookie quarterback does, but like drafting him that high with all those expectations on him and then throwing him into the mix right away, I think can be really detrimental to a young quarterback's development. And I think that this year he's been, a little bit more consistent with the Lions. So sometimes the change of scenery makes a big difference, but I also think that his ceiling is what it is. And so, I wouldn't get my expectations up too high.
Oh no.
No.
The Lions NFC North division rival Packers are 4.5-point favorites at the Commanders. What do you think of that game, and what do you think about the Packers overall this year? Since I haven't asked you about those guys.
Yeah, so I think the Packers win that one easily because I think that between just injuries and then like all the drama surrounding the team, I can't imagine having to work for the Commanders organization right now. Everything is such a mess. And so, yeah, I just don't see the Commanders being up to that challenge. Yeah, the Packers have been really interesting though. Like their offensive line performance has been a challenge. Rodgers, I think, has been dealing. Obviously, he had, I think, the thumb injury this week. He'll play, but will he be 100%? Who knows? His chemistry with his receivers has been off. I've seen a whole lot of, Aaron Rodgers pouty faces on the sidelines because of that. So yeah, I think that they just have a lot of weakness at some really key positions. A lot of times when you have, a top tier quarterback for so many years, and just given what their salaries are, it really does hamstring your ability to put quality talent around them. And I think that that's a little bit of what the Packers are sowing at this point.
Absolutely. And that's what I try to tell. That's what I try to tell my fellow Eagles fans is, there were a lot of people before the season. They're a little quiet. The people who were doing this are a little quiet now, but they were saying, "Oh, get rid of Jalen, go and get Aaron Rodgers, go and get Russell Wilson, go and get even Jimmy Garoppolo." Once you
Hmm.
pay those guys, you don't get a James Bradbury even on a 1 year deal on the Eagles. You don't get CJ. I mean, I
No,
guess you get CJ because he's still on a rookie deal, but you don't get to fill your roster with a bunch of those guys. Your quarterback is supposed to carry you
a,
when you do
qu-
that.
a quarterback on a rookie deal who is a serviceable starter is absolutely the dream. And
Yes.
as a GM, in my opinion, not that anybody pays me to be a GM, but
Yeah.
like that would always be my
Yes.
priority because, yeah, it just allows you to build such a more balanced team.
And because it's such a good asset, I mean, you really, other than hurting your starting quarterback's feelings and making people feel like you don't believe in them, if you had a really strong-minded quarterback, I mean, there's an argument to be made that you should pick a quarterback in the top 2 rounds every season if you can.
I have been saying this since Matt Ryan had been in the league for 5 years. And I was like, I think that the Patriots are a good example. They were able to trade away so many backup quarterbacks who were never going to take Tom Brady's spot and get real
Yes.
assets
Yes.
that they could build the team with from
Yes.
those trades. And so I was like, why are we not doing this? Why are we not letting somebody develop behind Matt Ryan, learn from him? He's a consummate pro. Like he is always fully prepared every week. Great leader. He's the kind of player you want to be the face of your franchise. Why are we not taking advantage of that and drafting somebody in the third or fourth round, letting them learn, develop, grow, and then hopefully developing them to the point that you can ship them off and get draft capital and return?
I mean, the Eagles, I fully believe that the Eagles kind of stumbled into the Jalen Hurts experience. They drafted him for that purpose, I believe, but then
Hmm.
Carson kind of bungled it and forced them to play Jalen, and then Jalen just took the
Yeah.
job.
Yeah. And I mean, it's been really fun to see him this year because he just has developed in leaps and bounds.
Oh my
Eagles fans
gosh.
have to be so happy with what y'all are seeing this year.
Most of us.
Most of us. There's always a few.
So the Giants, our division rivals, are 3-point underdogs at Jacksonville. Despite the 5-1, they're 3-point dogs in Jacksonville. What do you think about that line? What do you think about? I guess you said earlier you think that the Giants are kind of, you didn't use the word, but a little fraudulent. You know, that's used on our
Mhm.
favorite social media website. So
Yes. So this one, I honestly am leaning toward the Jags. I think that, and obviously, Eagles fans are very familiar with Doug Peterson. I think that he's a very good coach. I think that Urban Meyer really did a lot of harm to that team. Just the team building, the team development. I think that he did a lot of harm last year that now Peterson has to basically, undo. But I think that they're getting to a point where we're going to see more consistent play from the Jaguars, especially being at home. It's actually been cold in the Southeast the past couple of days,
okay,
but it's going to be back up in like high 70s, like close to 80 here in
nice.
Atlanta. So in Jacksonville, that heat for the Giants players is going to be not a benefit. So, I think that is something else that really could have an impact on that game.
Nice. You say you like the Jags to cover or squeak by even closer, maybe 1 point?
I'm going to say they're going to squeak by.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know about covering, but yeah, I think that that's one that they will pull out.
What about Pittsburgh at Miami, which is the Monday night game? They are
Oh
7-point
boy.
dogs. Pittsburgh 7-point dogs.
Okay, now I can't remember. Is Teddy Bridgewater healthy again?
That's all relative, right?
Yeah, yeah. I know that Tua, I hope he is not playing for a very long time because I'm very worried about his long-term brain health. I think that it probably depends on who's healthy enough to play quarterback for the Dolphins, and also what the Steelers situation is because their guy was in the concussion protocol
Yes.
too. So that one's really hard to call. I'm going to go with Miami just because it's in Miami. And
Yeah.
again, that heat's probably going to be a factor. So that one's kind of a toss up for me, but I'm going to go Miami.
So to your question about the Teddy, is Teddy good? Actually Teddy got in last week because the
Okay.
other guy got injured, and then Teddy came in. So if Teddy was healthy, I'm sure Teddy would have started, but he was like the emergency quarterback. So I mean, that's just bad luck on bad luck down there right now.
It really, really is. Yeah, I missed all of the games last Sunday because I was at a family funeral. So
No.
thanks for catching me up on that. But yeah, they're just a mess with that whole situation.
It's just, yeah, it's really, it's sad, to see, because we've learned so much, but at the same time, we just love the sport so much. We love the big hits. We love, all of it. And the guys are getting bigger and stronger and faster. They're trying to make the rules a little more to the point where guys are going to have less incidents of it.
Yeah.
I'm kind of coming to the conclusion that we should continue to try to do what we're doing to try to make the sport safer, but this is still, we'll still have these horrible instances.
Absolutely. And, I think that there are some new technologies they're looking at in terms of, helmet construction and things like that. Like, I think that there are, in addition to making sure that they're enforcing rules, equitably and consistently for player safety. I think that there are also some technological advancements that will hopefully be coming down the pipe soon that will also help protect players' health better.
And probably some grass that would give a little more could be something.
Yeah, definitely.
Because guys are getting slammed. I mean,
they are. And it's, anytime somebody is slow to get up or shaky when they get up, you just feel your heart drop into your stomach. I mean, it's so scary. It really is. And, I pay my mortgage by watching the NFL. So, I grew up around the sport. I love the sport. I really do. But I am always in favor of making the game safer for players.
Yeah. I think you hit on, the key point there. It's probably going to come more technologically than from the enforcement of rules is always important in all aspects of life, but largely, I mean, you got these guys, and the guys in 5 years, 10 years are even going to be even more athletically freakish than the guys we have now. It's just a math equation. The guys are so big, so strong, so fast.
You look at a guy like Aaron Donald, who should not be able to move the way that he does, or like Grady Jarrett, and you're just like, how is this a human being that's capable of these things?
I mean, Jason Kelsey for the Eagles. I mean, he's pummeling guys.
Yeah. Oh, it's wild.
Yes. Well, Jeanna, thank you so much. And for the listeners, when you look her up, if you're not listening, it's spelled Jeanna, but it's pronounced Jeanna. Jeanna, tell the people where we can follow along and show you some support. What are you working on right now and all that?
All right. You can find me on Twitter at Jeanna Thomas. My last name is Kelley, but if I change it in my handle, I lose my blue check mark, and we can't have that. And I do write some things at the Falcoholic. I spend most of my time now editing and managing, so I don't get to write as much, but I did write a feature that published yesterday. If anybody remembers Joe Burrow's Super Bowl suit, like the black and the silver. So I interviewed the designer. He dresses a lot of NFL players, Dak Prescott, Ezekiel Elliott. If you ever saw Gronk's little Gronk spike embroidered on the inside of his jacket, that was this guy, Tom Marchitelli from Gentleman's Playbook. So that's up now on SB Nation. It's one of the most fun things that I've ever written. It's really entertaining. I mean, that sounds kind of braggy, but it's entertaining because the guy that I interviewed was really interesting and really passionate about what he does. So definitely check that out. It's super fun.
Well, Jeanna, I definitely will. You guys should too. Thank you so much for coming on. Y'all, you can follow the show. It's Mention Pod on Twitter, MENTIONPOD. Also over on Instagram, it's honorable mention _podcast. And then me, of course, my personal handle, if you're one of those people who say just stick to sports, well, just don't go there. But if you're not that kind of person, go POLITIDOPE. Thank you so much for listening. See you soon.